All right, so gonna try something new here that we haven't done before. Reactions to other videos. So, got a video here up on the screen. I'm sure some of you can already read the title. This is from the Primitive Masculinity channel. Seems to be a new channel on YouTube, but their second video is this one. Will Amazon's Wheel of Time series emasculate men? Clicked on YouTube, saw this, and I was like, I feel compelled to react to it. So, gonna give that a shot. Don't do many of these style videos, so if there's background noise, if the audio sounds a little weird or funky, or you hear fans or whatever in the background, I'm sorry. I'll work on it as I can. I should be able to work on it better since I do a podcast. I did record a little bit before this where I made it about halfway through the video, but the recording was just trash. It was left paused for most of it, so I'm going to try to be as true to what I initially said as I can. But full disclosure, about the first half of this video I've already seen. Here we go. We're going to get started on this. I'm going to be honest with it. This is not to primitive masculinity. This is not meant to be a dig at you. This is not to be anything offensive to you. However, I am going to be completely honest with my interpretations of what is said and what is done in the video and how things are portrayed and talked about, because to not do so would be disingenuous.
For the most part, when we see the women, we see power. When we see the men, we see suffering and fear and weakness. Welcome to Primitive Joe.
I'm going to let you explain that. I like the background. I like all the books. I like the couple like security boxes or label boxes, whatever you want to call them, over your right shoulder. The logo looks pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie, like the whole aesthetic looks pretty cool. Feels like a real camp, like fireside kind of chat kind of thing.
Gentlemen, where we examine how men are portrayed in modern culture and work to define a masculinity we can be proud of. If you haven't seen the trailer,
Work to define a masculinity that we can be proud of. Okay.
If you haven't seen the trailer yet, Amazon is making the wildly popular Wheel of Time books into an Amazon Prime series, surely hoping to create the next Game of Thrones phenomenon.
There's a newer image that you could have shown. When was this video posted? September 15th. Yeah. The trailer's out, and the very end of the trailer includes a release date. You could have posted that. That's more like me as a fan, as a Wheel of Time oriented content creator, being like, oh, well, let's help shout out when it's going to come out as a TV series. But still, it was a good poster. So, good soup.
If you're not already a fan, the Wheel of Time series is no simple sword and sorcery epic. At its core, the books are an insightful and realistic commentary on the relationships between the sexes, set to...
Okay, we're 40 seconds in, and I disagree. These weren't even realistic interpretations of the relationships between the sexes, assuming male and female genders or sexes, in the 90s or the 80s. It was closer to, I guess, what the relationship was in the 80s or 90s, but still not entirely accurate. This was a guy writing relationships between men and women with a female editor, with his wife as editor, and trying to, I don't know if I would say be fair, but definitely in line with stereotypes.
In a fantasy world with a fabulous plot to boot. Our collective picture of masculinity comes to us from all aspects of our culture, and much of it is implicit in the entertainment we consume. So, if Amazon can actually reproduce those nuances in the series, it will be absolutely fantastic for both men and women.
So, like, implicit in the media that we consume, the media we consume is often influenced by it, but from my personal experience, the media is often an exaggerated form of what people actually experience. Not to say that that's true across the board, but the interactions that you see between men and women in Lord of the Rings and The Witcher and all these other different fantasy style shows, because we're going to stick with fantasy here, is not indicative of all of the kind of interactions.
But when I saw the trailer for the series, I thought, oh crap, they're gonna screw this thing up. Today,
Oh, okay. Let's see what your reasons are.
Hey, we're dissecting the trailer. There's almost 50 scenes presented in under 2 minutes, so it moves fast. But I've got to give the producers props on at least one level. The trailer is very intelligently organized. This was no slapdash amalgam of clips. There is a great meaning in what they showed and how they showed it. If you've seen it and read the books, please let me know what you think of my analysis. And if
Yeah, it's what I'm doing now.
you haven't, don't worry, I'm going to explain as we go along. One Redditor, when asked to sum up the series in 1 or 2 lines, answered, "Hillbilly teenagers are tasked by a mysterious wizard lady with saving the world and failing to communicate."
Okay, comedically accurate as far as what a good summary of the series itself. No. Like, wizard lady. Like, I get it. Like, if you're trying to associate people to understand, like, that magic is used and that there's, you know, like, female, like, style wizards and that kind of stuff, like, maybe, but
Which actually is a great summary because
we're not going to agree on much, are we?
the failing to communicate is more compelling even than the saving the world part. Appropriately, the trailer began by introducing us to those 5 hillbilly teenagers: Nynaeve, Egwene, Rand, Matt, and Perrin. The book presents Rand, Matt, and Perrin as stereotypes of young men. Rand, the somewhat naive but hardworking and responsible farm boy sheepherder. Matt as the "is there any trouble I can get into" mischief maker. And Perrin as the physically strong, he's apprenticed to the village blacksmith, but shy and awkward boy.
More introverted than shy, I would think. Don't know how different those actually are, but I feel they're different. He's more just kind of quiet and like listens and watches than he says anything. So don't know how accurate it is to say he's shy and awkward.
Perrin is the physically strong, he's apprenticed to the village blacksmith, but shy and awkward boy. Nynaeve is introduced to us as the hot-headed village wisdom, the local healer.
There's nothing in the trailer to indicate that she's hot-headed. So if you're pulling only from the trailer, you're wrong.
Healer with a very low view of men.
A low view of men? Like, no, she has a low view of... She doesn't even have a low view of everybody. She's incredibly frustrated with everybody in the village, and for people that have read the series, you can understand why. She's the youngest village wisdom to ever grace Amon's field, and as such, everybody questions everything she says and does. So it's defensive, because everybody makes her feel like she has to prove herself worthy, when all the training she's already done already does that.
It's promised to Rand in an arranged marriage, who's being...
No. No, there is no promised, there is no arranged marriage. Like, that, it's not the way it works, that's not the way it happens, and it's not what is going on here. Through their relationship and their closeness, it's perceived by the village and themselves that eventually they're going to get married when they're both old enough. But it is by no means arranged or promised or anything like that. That's just factually incorrect.
Who's being trained by Nynaeve in these medicinal arts. The trailer gives us a somewhat different introduction to these 5. Unlike the book where we meet the boys first, we get Nynaeve teaching or training Egwene first. Both of them look as if they're doing something weighty of importance. Nynaeve tells Egwene to be strong. We get the comedy of the surprise push off the cliff, but later in the trailer we're going to see Egwene serene in that crazy water. We get the impression that there's something of an initiation or teaching going on here. In contrast, when we're introduced to the boys after the girls, we see them seated and drinking, and it should be cider, in the inn. The contrast here is stark. The girls are doing something important, meaningful, while the boys are essentially frolicking. We don't get...
Oh, God. Oh, light. Oh, creator. So, one, it doesn't matter that we see Egwene and Nynaeve before we see Rand, Matt, and Perrin, or as you put it, the boys before the girls before the boys. It doesn't really matter. It's not important for the story who you meet first. Meeting Rand first in the books does more of like a plot building device than it does any kind of statement on who should be at the forefront of the story. If anything, it's indicative of maybe who you should watch in the story. Like, who's the first person we met? Okay, then maybe that's the first person that I should watch. I think you're pulling a false dichotomy here, that there's a meaning behind seeing Nynaeve and Egwene first in the trailer, and the fact that they appear to be doing something serious, versus Rand, Matt, and Perrin doing something frolicky, as you kind of put it. I mean, when we meet him first in the books, whenever Matt shows up, he's being mischievous. He's talking about releasing a badger on the green, and hanging out with Rand. It's not too long after that they meet up with Perrin, and the entire trio is just kind of there and talking. They're not doing anything important in the books. Like, the most important thing that they're doing is providing plot exposition, providing introductions to characters, and delivering apple brandy and cider to the Winespring Inn from Tam and Rand's farm, from the Althor farm.
Picture of Rand working on the farm, or of Perrin hammering away in the smithy. Now, the series itself may well begin with Rand and his father as the books did, but the trailer's definitely wanting us to see the importance of the women. Don't jump to any conclusions here. I am not bashing strong women doing important things. In fact,
don't jump to conclusions. But this whole thing has been jumping to conclusions about what the ordering in the trailer means. And that even if the centric focus, as all the press that's been released about season 1 has been, it's the story or following Moiraine, a powerful female magic user from the powerful Aes Sedai organization. Like, everything that is out is from the Watch Moiraine, watch, like, this is a female-centric story, is a lot of what the releases are about. So nothing in the trailer should come as a surprise if you're going to look at it from they're focusing on the women versus anything else kind of perspective on it. I still feel that it's disingenuous. However, I've read the books, so I kind of know what happens and who does what and that kind of stuff. Whereas the trailer, I guess I could see where it would lead people, like, seeing the trailer to believe that the series has, like, an entirely, like, female-centric focus when it doesn't, or at least the books don't. This still strikes me as kind of reaching and disingenuous.
in fact, there are a few things in life I find as attractive as a strong woman with a purpose.
Did you really just pull the "I have a black friend" excuse?
Women ought to be strong and ought to do important things. Don't think that I'm bashing the women in the story, the characters. Robert Jordan has made them fabulous and worthy of admiration. But what I am pointing out is that the trailer makes clear from the outset who is to be admired. The trailer is faithful to Jordan.
What about being shoved off a cliff means you should be admired? But I guess it's still on the track of, like, you're seeing them do important things versus the guys doing nothing. Oh, okay.
Insofar as it begins by juxtaposing the men and the women. The producers understand that the story revolves around the sexes.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. The story revolves around a fight between good and evil, a fight between the shadow and the light. It revolves around finding balance and restoring balance to the world and working together. That's what, like, what?
When Egwene comes into the inn, she stands erect and confident, and Rand shoots her that little schoolboy grin. This is also faithful to Jordan's presentation of them, but only from one of their perspectives, and this is important. I'll explain why later and point out a few more examples of where the trailer is a little unbalanced. But let's keep going.
Leaving memories that become legend.
Another juxtaposition, right? Some guy in pain looking at a ring. Fans, I'm assuming this is Luz Theron mourning Alyena. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
You're wrong.
And Egwene emerging from the water in a rebirth type of scene. Notice how the water's used here. He's in pain and his face is painted by his tears. She's being reborn from the water, painted and transformed, but confident and serene. So in the first two sets, we have two juxtapositions of men and women. The next set of clips focuses on the women exclusively.
The power inside you. All over the world, there are different names for it. But it's one thing. One power. And women who can touch it. We protect the world.
All right, so here we're introduced to the wizard woman, Moiraine, in the...
If you're watching along with me, I hope you have some courage. Definitely of the authorized variety. So, slancha to your apple juice. The Wizard Lady.
Context of a pan of the city, Tar Valon, ruled by the Lady Wizards, the Aes Sedai.
I'm just assuming that Wizard Lady and Wizard Woman and all this, is being used to help a viewer that is not familiar with the series to understand kind of what the Aes Sedai and what Moiraine are. Like, kind of like how they fit into the story, more so than just being like, oh, it's just a wizard thing.
She does the whole mysterious lower the hood move to reveal the strong woman beneath. We see...
Again, like, how many times am I going to have to say disingenuous in this shit? Like, beyond sounding incredibly condescending, it's just wrong. Like, the tossing back of the hood to reveal a figure at all underneath is a fantasy trope, more of a like thing to show import, that the person that you're seeing is important. So it doesn't matter that it's the female Moraine here.
See Egwene serenely floating in the raging river, a gathering of Aes Sedai, the hall of the tower before the Emerald seat, the leader of the Aes Sedai. The women are portrayed in the colors of their ajas. Think of an aja as like an exclusive society among the Aes Sedai, and we are left in no doubt of their power. We see an Aes Sedai healing, Moraine using the power in battle before seeing some of the red aja standing tall, proud, and threatening. All the while, a woman voicing over, talking about the power that some women can tap into, concluding with, "We protect the world," and showing an Aes Sedai using the power to protect the group of Aes Sedai and their warders from the arrows. Now, warders, just FYI, are men who are magically bound to the Aes Sedai to serve and protect them physically, because the Aes Sedai are not allowed to use their power as an offensive weapon against anything other than servants of the Dark One.
Not entirely accurate. You've got the kind of gist of it, but they can use it anytime in self-defense. But they can only use it inherently offensively against Shadowspawn and the forces of the Dark One.
They're not allowed to use their power as an offensive weapon against anything other than servants of the Dark One. This presentation of the women seems pretty spot on to me. The Aes Sedai are powerful and feared, and they do see their mission as protecting the world. But what we haven't seen yet is the other side of the coin. We've seen how they view themselves, but we haven't yet seen how others view them. And that is what is so fascinating about Jordan's books. He does present them this way, as they see themselves, but he also presents them as others see them: arrogant, haughty, deceitful, and not necessarily good. It's interesting to note here that one of the main characters from the books who thinks of them this way, Tom Maryland, does not make an appearance in the trailer at all. And if he isn't in the series, that is a big fail. But we don't really know yet, so let's keep going.
We don't know. Okay, first point on them not being shown in this potentially negative light. Like, right here, we see that kind of, as you mentioned, kind of self-righteous, kind of hoity, I guess, kind of mentality. But that's, for a lot of people, that's just how the Red Aja is perceived, and that's how they kind of conduct themselves, both in the book and as it appears in the trailer. So we do see some of that. Now you can write that off as like just a way that the Red Aja is. So here's the other point. Like, the actor for Tom has been cast. Alexander Willem, I'm sure I'm saying the last name at least wrong, has been cast as Tom. And we've seen the teaser of Tom's guitar. So Tom is there. We know Tom is in the series, at least, and fairly confidently in season 1.
That eclipse set off this time by a man's voice.
No matter what happens, what pain we face, what heartbreak, the wheel keeps turning.
Bran pulls his bow. Matt's looking at the evil dagger from Shadar Logoth in a longing and conniving sort of way. Matt is looking at a corpse. Perrin's being faced down by a wolf. Heartbreak is said as Rand approaches Egwene. The boys are sitting dejected in a dark place. All of these images mirror the voiceover: pain and heartbreak. Given that, it isn't surprising that the material's dark, the cinematography's dark. With the exception of Rand pulling the bow, the presentation of the men are as the suffering ones. Now, this in itself might not be a bad thing, but the contrast between the presentation of the women and the men is stark. For the most part, when we see the women, we see power. When we see the men, we see suffering and fear and weakness.
I don't see the weakness that you're alluding to. Like, seeing them look frustrated or dejected or whatever, I mean, why is that inherently a sign of weakness? But also, given everything the Amon Fielder 5 have been through up to this point, and Moraine and Lan as well, just getting to Shadar Logoth, they're all going to feel kind of dejected and kind of sad and kind of down. Like, they just left their home, and since they've left, they've been constantly running, they've been constantly tracked or attacked or whatever. Like, who wouldn't feel this way? Now, yes, we only see necessarily in the scene that you kind of ended on, we only see Perrin and Matt kind of sitting down, like maybe looking dejected. I think they more so just look tired because they've been on the move and on the run ever since leaving home, and they're not used to this kind of travel by any stretch of the imagination. Weak? I don't see the weakness portrayed.
Next up in the clips is the bad guys and all the lovely sword and sorcery fighting.
One is coming for your friends.
The last battle is coming. The only thing that matters is what you do.
Dark scenes, bad guys, boys running away, what appears to be bad guys with swords coming down the hill, some creepy guy in a prison breaking free. Fans, I'm assuming this is low grain.
Low grain, yes. Yes, it is.
Some creepy guy in a prison breaking free. Fans, I'm assuming this is low grain. Then we get the first picture of a woman, Nynaeve, in distress. But unlike the fairy tales where Prince Charming comes riding in to save the princess, that scene cuts to Moiraine and...
Like, why do you feel the need to throw the caveat in there? I'm not saying he should. Like, so when we see the men in distress, there's no mention of somebody riding in to save them, anybody rushing in to help them, anything like that, which is definitely a trope that we get from things like Lord of the Rings, where despite his ill intentions initially, whenever Boromir is kind of chasing after Frodo, we see Boromir like stand up and defend him, and then we see Aragorn make it there eventually as well, and we see like all of these men fighting to save them. So why is it worth mentioning that we see a woman in distress with no apparent, knight in shining armor coming to rescue her, but not worth mentioning the same, like, we don't see anybody rushing in to comfort like Matt or Perrin or Rand or escort them anywhere.
That scene cuts to Moiraine entering the Hall of the Aes Sedai. The picture here is clear. The solution to the fear is the Aes Sedai.
The solution to the fear is the Aes Sedai. I mean, maybe there's an element of that, but I see it more like if you're going to critique it in any way and like what jumping to Moiraine entering the hall could mean, it seems more like an absence of the Aes Sedai than anything else, which isn't accurate for anything. Like, I don't get it here.
We see Moiraine riding, and then we're introduced to Lan. Lan is Moraine's warder and is supposed to be the picture of the quiet and somewhat disturbed masculinity, the chiseled-faced man who knows no fear, who courts death, and who is so imposing that anyone with half a brain gives him a wide berth. Now, I'm not actually getting that from the guy who was cast as Lan.
The guy is Daniel Henney. How do you not get that from even the trailer? Like, he has still got the cold stare, the seriousness about him, the don't fuck with me air, if you will.
But it is the first real picture in the trailer of a man who is competent and powerful. Here's the conundrum. The women are presented as powerful and serene. The men, with the exception of Lan, much less so.
Because you're isolating... based off of your imagery choice, you're isolating Moiraine, who is going to be inherently powerful and serene because she's been an Aes Sedai for a while now. This isn't her first rodeo dealing with danger. She doesn't think Trollocs are a magical, fantastical kind of legend that people use to scare the children. She's been around the block a time or two. So she's going to be calm and serene. In fact, the Aes Sedai serenity is a core feature of the Aes Sedai, being calm when the shit hits the fan. The boys you're referring to they're from a small village. They're from the backwoods. They're from as the previous illusion gave, not illusion, but the previous description gave, they're hillbillies, if you will. They're not used to any of this kind of shit. They're going to be running from danger because that's what they've always done. There's wolves attacking the sheep. Run to safety and try to defend your sheep like that.
Most of all, the scenes with the women are well lit. Most of the scenes with the men are dark. But this isn't the problem. In fact, in the beginning of the series, this is how Jordan presents the characters, more or less. The boys are just that. They're boys. The girls, though of similar age, are presented as more mature, which we often find to be the case in our own world.
Okay, then where's the fucking problem? If we know that stereotypically females mature at an earlier rate than males, and that's what's being portrayed here, where's the fucking problem? Like, if you're going to go purely based on age and the stereotypes of gender and sex and what we find in biology in our own world, then why is it an issue that Nynaeve and Egwene and Moiraine are portrayed as composed and more mature and strong, where the boys, like Rand and Matt and Perrin, with the exception of Lan, seem more kind of scared about everything. I mean, pretty sure Egwene screamed whenever she was pushed off the cliff, even though she knew it was about to happen. That wasn't a surprise shove. She knew she was getting shoved off. Like, you're standing at the edge of a cliff, and Nynaeve is at your back with her hand on your back. Like, you fucking know.
Even the ancient Aes Sedai symbol, it's not shown in the trailer.
That is not the fucking Aes Sedai symbol. Sláinte. That's not the Aes Sedai symbol. It's not. Not by any stretch, not by any imagination, not by any whatever. And literally a cursory Google search of Aes Sedai symbol will tell you that is not it. That is something completely different. When things are this easy to fact check, to look and make sure you're right, that kind of ticks me off a little bit.
It's not shown in the trailer, but it's a black and white yin-yang type thing.
You even described it and you still got the imagery wrong.
That represents the male side as black and the female side as white. So the choice of clips to present the men and the women are kind of in line with that light-dark motif.
I actually like that comparison. I do. Like, it's not something I thought about before this. I kind of like that. Like, it adds depth to the trailer. It adds depth to the symbolism. Like, that is a comparison I like. So very well done, sir. Very well done.
And props to the producers if they did that on purpose. The problem is, as I said before, we aren't shown any complexity. We aren't shown the different perspectives that the characters have of each other. And that is what makes the book so compelling.
It is a 2-minute teaser trailer that's entire purpose is to entice you to watch it, to pay attention to the news, to pay attention to it coming out. That is it. The trailer's purpose is not to introduce the intricacies and complexities of the series. Like, you're gonna need a much longer trailer than 2 minutes to introduce the complexities. This is a situation where, like, you're demanding more from something than is reasonable to get.
What Jordan is able to do with the books is show what the guys think of themselves and what the girls think of themselves and what each think of each other. Now, sometimes it's comical, sometimes insightful, but there is always another side to the coin. And the trailer doesn't give me any indication that the most remarkable thing about the books will make it into the series. It's true, Egwene is smart and powerful, but she's also bossy and condescending. Rand is a bit of a dolt of a sheepherder, but he's also the most selfless guy on the page. The Aes Sedai are powerful, but they're controlling and manipulative. My fear is that without this kind of nuance, we might just be offered another Hollywood cliche. I hope I'm wrong about this. When Amazon drops the season, I'll be watching and making another video where I hope I will have to pull a mea culpa and praise what they've done with the series of books that really are some of the greatest things in sliced bread.
Okay, I'm so glad that you said that. If you come at the trailer expecting it to be here's a broad spectrum overview of what the series is, then you're coming at the trailer wrong. And it's unfair to expect it to be that way.
Alright, so if you like it and you want to see more, give it a like and a subscribe. Let me know what you think about my analysis. Disagree with me if you need to.
Yeah, thank you for allowing us to disagree, because there's a lot about this that I disagree with. I have a lot of issues with this video. There's a lot of things about this video that I disagree with. There's a lot of assumptions I feel that are erroneously based, that are incorrect, or at the very base level completely disingenuous. There are things to me that indicate that maybe you haven't read the series, or that maybe you didn't look a bunch into the series, or that this video was like something you were trying to get out, or whatever the case is. I don't know. My goal here is not to bash the primitive masculinity channel, because the editing was pretty decent. The backdrop was pretty decent. You put a lot of thought into the video. And honestly, like, your video setup looks a lot better than mine. So, yeah, but there's a fair amount about what was said that I just cannot agree with, and from the fandom I know and am familiar with, are not gonna go with. And this video was published on the 15th of September, and this is the first I'm seeing it in the circles that I run. I'm surprised that I haven't heard anything about this video before this. Normally these type of videos make their rounds and people are like, hey, have you seen this? This is a thing. And maybe it just, is more recently getting traction. I urge you, primitive masculinity, If you disagree with anything that I've said, if you happen to see this video, whichever, which if you do, thank you for watching, and hopefully you watched the entire thing so that you kind of understood what I was saying in general. Like, there's the side of me that that's like, I'm not trying to attack you or what you said are your viewpoints. Your viewpoints are your own, and at least you put it out there and you were willing to articulate a defense for them. I disagree. Now, there are things that I think that are just intrinsically wrong that you said, and you also made a couple points that are noteworthy. I don't know how much of your title was intended to kind of be jarring and grab attention, because that is the metric that YouTube operates on. I would be more than happy to have a conversation or discussion about it. So for everyone else, let us know if you want us to react to different videos that have been put out there. Preferably, 12 minutes or less or so. Because we do have to edit it down. Like, as I'm looking, I have been recording and talking for about 48 minutes. If these kind of reaction things are things that you think you might enjoy or things you might find entertaining, let us know and we'll try to do more of them. But for at least myself here at the Black Tower Podcast, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you again next time.